Hi DOPs! It is time for another cinematography breakdown. I recently posted a video about ketchup commercial we shot in Georgia, where I went into details about how unlucky we were due to bad weather conditions, initially trying to shoot a summer vibe video. Honestly, we were very close to a failure because of the fog and the gray sky. Despite I had 18 kilowatt and 6 kilowatt sources of light, skylift as well, it was extremely difficult to shoot. This video is another story. It was also shot outdoors. It also has summer vibes, but we were lucky this time. It was sunny, there was merely a few clouds, but they were not getting in the way of the sun. This video was shot using Arri Alexa mini camera. Elite S7 lenses, made in Russia by the way. These were anamorphic lenses, quite inexpensive to rent. At the same time, they have an interesting character to them. I really like the character of the optics. That is why I use them sometimes. As to lighting equipment, we had two 12-lamp jumbo panels, providing a warm light and a powerful generator for them. But we only used them for one scene when it was getting dark. Basically, the entire video was shot using reflection panels and black frames. We had a large 12 feet black frame to help us create shadows. We also had a 12 feet black frame and an 8 feet diffusion frame that had a silver foil on the opposite side. These three frames were mainly used for this video. First, I would like to tell you about location scouting. Our location featured a road down which a bicyclist was riding. In the background, there was a small village, some farm or something like that. It looked pretty cool. When we arrived there, we figured out that the sun's path of motion was somewhat like this. If we are looking at the road from camera's side, the sun is always in backlight position. So we found that camera angle and I knew that the sun would always serve as backlight. We were super happy with this. And I personally, most of the times, shoot videos having the sun in the backlight position. Very rarely I use it as a side key light. In terms of light, the location suited us perfectly. We start with a wide shot in the morning. The sun is in the backlight position. And as it continues moving to the right side of the frame, when we switch to closer shots and dialogues, we adjust the scene to keep the sun in that position. A few more words about location scouting. We planned to place the camera on this side of the road and intended to adjust its position and schedule everything relative to the sun's ever-changing position. In the end of the day, at sunset, we planned to shoot the pack shot. The video begins with the main character moving down the back road. We defined a particular part of the road that we needed for the scene and laid down rails. This path turned out to be about 50 meters long. And using dolly, we were moving back and forth. In this scene, we are moving backwards to shoot this establishing shot. Why do cinematographers like shooting videos having the sun as a source of backlight? Because it is quite convenient for controlling the exposure on the face. At the same time, An overexposed backlight is not a big deal, because it's normal. In addition, all objects in the background seem to have more contrast and volume under such backlight. For instance, the sunlight illuminating the trees only illuminates their tops, while most of the tree itself remains under a shadow. Which is why the trees have more volume, there is more depth. Further away in the background, other trees are illuminated as well, and they also have a lot of volume. There are different tones between the dark and the light. If they were illuminated from the camera side, they would be illuminated very evenly. It would be difficult to affect the brightness, and they would look very flat. The same applies to the buildings illuminated by the backlight. The roofs look very interesting. They may be illuminated under one angle while shadowed under another. The light from the camera side would illuminate everything at once. Alternatively, we could use the sun as source of side light, so the sun could illuminate our character from the side. It would cast a shadow, etc., etc. This option would also be acceptable. Later we switched to a closer shot. We shot the scene by moving alongside the road parallel to the biker. Here was our dolly with the camera attached to it. And we were filming the panorama, aiming for the cart and the front wheel. The sun here was also serving as backlight, and in order to create a contrast, because there was an enormous amount of light coming from the sky, from the camera side we mounted two large black frames, 12 feet and 20 feet frames. They were right behind the rails and created a large wall. Thanks to this, we were able to obtain a contrast on the main character. We can see a certain depth of shadows. The entire front is slightly under shadow, the cart, the arm. This was achieved thanks to these two black frames. If we did not use them, everything would be flooded with the light. The main character would be as bright as the sky behind him. Later we have a closer 3/4 shot of our main character. We did a little trick and placed our character right onto a dolly. We mounted two chairs, one for cinematographer and the other for the actor. We stretched the camera a little further, and the actor was imitating a bicycle ride. Here the sun still serves as backlight, illuminating the main character from behind. On the right, in fact, there was a third person on the dolly, a lighting cameraman, holding a 4x4 reflecting board that reflected the sunlight onto the character's face. That is why we see such a soft key light here. Even some Rembrandt lighting, since one side of the face is darker than the other. On the left side, apart from those two black frames located behind the rails, we gripped a floppy onto a C-stand attached to the dolly. It was a 4x4 floppy that helped make the shadow on the left side of the face a little more pronounced. Because some light was still passing through on the left, it provided a pretty cool backlight on the shadowed part of the face, which I actually really liked and did not want to avoid. Of course, I needed to make that side of the face shadowed, but I was fine with that light passing from where the floppy was not present. Usually it is the way it is done most of the times. The frame is adjusted until the backlight appears on the face, the cheekbone, the chin. Later there is a scene shot from the side. We were getting ahead of the character, then we asked him to speed up and he appeared in the frame, while the second bicyclist was slowing down. This scene was shot along the entire length of the rails, which was around 50 meters, as I said. Again, I would like to point out that our 12 feet and 20 feet black frames were blocking the sunlight from the camera's side. Due to this, we obtained a contrast on the characters' faces. We can also notice the contrast on their arms. They are darker in the foreground, yet there is backlight visible. The sky provides an excellent backlight that we can notice here. It feels like there was a giant diffusion frame. The sky was a bit hazy, was no longer blue, but still the sunlight was quite intensive and strong. This is noticeable thanks to the shadows from the wheels and the characters. So the shadows are quite pronounced, although the sky was no longer blue and became a little hazy. At first I thought this would spoil the video, but later as I looked into the frame, I noticed that because our characters were dressed in white clothes, everything was matching very good in terms of color. There is a green landscape, white sky, and white clothes. I actually think that if the sky was blue, it would kind of disturb the whole picture we see here. So surprisingly for me, white clothes look better with the white sky. Here is another close shot of a second character. The light scheme is absolutely the same as before, only this time we were shooting at a slightly different angle, just to make the scene look slightly different and avoid two 100% identical close shots that would certainly look less realistic. We could even use a different lens here. If my memory serves me well, for the previous close shot we used a 50mm lens, whereas for this one we used a 75mm lens. The sun still serves as a source of backlight. On the right there was a white reflection board. On the left, in addition to two large black frames, there was a floppy helping us obtain this volume and contrast on the actor's face. This is a so-called negative fill. Fill means fill in light. So negative presumes darkening the area that we would otherwise fill in with light. This helps create more contrast, more volume and depth, especially under such weather conditions when the sunlight seems to be illuminating all objects from everywhere. Later, both characters stopped next to one another and we switched to over-the-shoulder shots. In this frame, the sun changed its position. It was somewhere here. We're still using it as a source of light and also use its light for reflections. On the left side there was an 8 feet reflecting board. Not sure if it was white or silver. I think it was a silver one. We simply placed it further away. The white was not sufficient for a decent key light, so I think it was a silver. But it was too much, which is why we placed it at a larger distance. It was reflecting the sunlight and illuminating our main character, providing key light. Of course, there is a large 20 feet black frame. I think we placed it above the actors. It was blocking an excessive sunlight and creating the shadow on the helmet. It would definitely look less pleasant if it was all illuminated. But here we obtained a transition from a lighter to a darker part on both helmet and the head. Additionally, a 12 feet black frame was placed on the right for extra darkening, for shadows on the right side of the face and the clothes. The actor in the foreground was also darkened thanks to this frame. Overall, this helped obtain a very good color contrast on the faces. So basically, one large frame was there for illumination and the second one was there for darkening, while the sun served as backlight. That was all. We did not need any extra sources of light. That same frame on the right side was also adjusted until the moment when this beautiful flare appeared on the actor's face. Since there is a sky behind, this flare is justified. If it was not there, the frame would look unnatural. In addition, this light emphasized the shoulder and illuminated the actor in the foreground. It illuminated his eyes and his lips. When working with black frames, it's important to not overdo anything. Once we created shadows, we must think if we actually need to open the frame a little bit. Move it slightly to let some backlight pass to emphasize the face. When we were shooting from the opposite side, it seemed that the sun was shining directly at his head from the camera's side. In order to avoid this, we changed position of both our actors slightly. We turned them around. We could do this because the background was blurred and because it kind of looked the same regardless from the angle. So we slightly turned them around to make the sun a source of sidelight. In order to soften it, we used a diffusion frame. I believe it was a 1/4 density frame. This helped make the light softer. The left side of the face was darkened with a large black frame. Everything above and below was darkened, even the light that could be reflected from the ground and the grass. Here we also were turning the frame to help some light pass and illuminate the face and the helmet. Overall, to create some backlight. Later we switched to a shot where we see both characters standing face to the camera. I think we shot the scene first because that's when the sun was in the appropriate point. The sun is somewhere there, covered in haze, serving as a source of backlight. From the camera's side, there is a large black frame that stretches up top. Actually, it reaches the point above their heads, thus creating shadows in the foreground, on the clothes and their faces. A 12 feet black frame was standing on the left, providing extra shadows that we can see on the arms of the character on the left. In contrast, on the right side there was a white reflection board, helping us obtain a side key light. We can see it on both actors. The actor on the right turns his head slightly. Still, it's not a big deal, as we have a transition from dark to bright. A closer shot is the same story. And this is the only frame we shot using an artificial light. We used a warm light from our jumbo panels because this was shot the last when the sun was setting. We used one jumbo to illuminate the grass, while the second was used as backlight to create this flare on the arm. In addition, the light from the sky was also helping us as it was not completely dark, despite the sun was setting already. So the sky provided this fill-in light. In this scene, where the use of product is shown, everything was darkened from the camera's side by a large black frame. It was necessary to create shadow here and have a transition from darker to lighter areas. On the right there was a reflection board. It reflected the sunlight and directed it onto the leg. So we darkened one side and illuminated the opposite side, thanks to which we obtained this transition from light to dark. Here's the pack shot. I also think we used jumbo here. It seems that we directed it at a horse standing in the background because I can see a warm light on it. The sky was illuminating the product. On the left side, of course, everything was darkened by a black frame. That is all for this breakdown, my friends. I think it was helpful, as I believe it managed to show that you don't always need artificial sources of light to create a beautiful picture. Sometimes all you need is a few frames and reflection boards. Of course, large frames require a number of people to manage and set up. It often requires a proper stretching and fixation to the ground. If you have a 20 feet black frame, you will need 2 people simply for holding it. But you also need more people to do the rest of the work. For this video, I had 1 gaffer and 3 or 4 lighting cameramen, so a total of 5 people. That is why we had 3 frames, reflecting boards, floppies. Quite a lot actually. On the other hand, we did not have to use any sources of artificial light, bring a power generator, although we had it, but we only had to use it a couple of times and could do without it actually. We took that power generator and 2 jumbo panels just in case there's going to be a bad weather, no sun, etc. In that case, we'd figure something out using these jumbos to save the day. But since the weather did not let us down, we did not have to use them. I wish you luck with your projects. And see you in the next video. Bye.